Hey everybody, today we're talking about Tom King's Human Target. Hey everybody, and welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent, and today we're talking about The Human Target by Tom King. Yes, in my somewhat love, somewhat hate relationship with Tom King, I picked up volumes 1 and 2 of the Human Target hardcovers and have read them, and I was thinking about, like, should I do one video or two? And I feel like it's one story, it's just in 2 hardcovers. It really doesn't make sense to do 2 videos. So here you are, a review of all 12 issues in one video. So first things first, let's talk about the format here, right? This is a DC Black Label book that was put out in 12 individual issues. What's weird though is that we'll just get to the way it's collected. Number 1, in 2 different hardcovers, both for $30. That's $60 DC got out of me, as opposed to the Batman the Knight hardcover that recently also came out. This is 10 issues, not 12, but it was $40. So for 2 more issues, you got $20 more out of my wallet, when really this story is so singular and there's not really, like, yeah, it stops at the midway point in volume 1, but there's really no reason for it to be collected in 2 different hardcovers. Like, it really should just be one thicker one. Like, even the Batman's Grave by Brian Hitch and who wrote that? Was it Azzarello maybe? That's 12 issues in 1 volume. So it's really DC just capitalizing on Tom King's name and squeezing more money out of fans. So I don't like that. I think that's pretty shitty. You know, and the other weird thing, I'm going to point this out too, is that this is a DC Black Label book. It's written by Tom King, and there is murder, there is sex, there's adult situations. Like, it's very adult, so it belongs in the Black Label line. Totally makes sense to me. However, there is, like, the little ampersands for curse words all throughout the book. If you have your Black Label, you have the ability to put in any F word or S word or, you know, just whatever words you want in there. Why are we still babying the audience and not putting in the curse words here? Now, some could say, hey, Brent, you're talking about the JLI. They didn't curse in the 80s, so this fits with that. It just, okay, fine, but it clashes with the book because it is a mature book, but yet I feel like I'm reading something from a time past, maybe, because of these ampersands and just things instead of the real curse words. So I don't like that. I don't like that. All right, so formatting and how they put in the curse words aside, how is The Human Target? For me, this falls somewhere on the middle of the Tom King scale. Not great, not terrible. So if you're not familiar with my Tom King scale, I just made it up, number 1. But number 2, it kind of goes like this. Like, The Vision, Mr. Miracle are on the great side of the scale. His Batman run, or a couple of other things, the Heroes in Crisis, or Batman Catwoman, that is on the terrible end of the scale. And there's some variations in between. But in general, to me, my opinion, Tom King is better when he's telling one story all the way through, as opposed to what he was trying to do in Batman, Catwoman, and Batman, and a bunch of other things where he's trying to tell 3 different storylines at the same time, and you know, juggling in between them with no fixture between what storyline was. Like, it's like that Batman Catwoman run, that series, that's 12 issues, is just a giant mess because you have the same artist doing different time periods, and there's some variation between them. Sometimes there's not. It's just hella confusing. So for me, he works best when he's telling one story from beginning to end. And yeah, if you're jumping around in there with a flashback or 2, that's fine. You know, but this is somewhere in the middle. Like, to me, Strange Adventures, which I reviewed on the channel a couple months back, is better than this. That's for sure. Strange Adventures had me hooked. I was in. It's like, what, 11 or 12 issues long. And all the way, yeah, I think to the end of issue 11, I didn't want to stop reading that book. And that book is, you know, is juggling between the present and what's in Ron with 2 different artists, but it's 2 different artists that you can clearly tell where in the book you're reading what's taking place, because the art is so vastly different. You got Mitch Gerrits and, oh gosh, who's the other guy? Doc Shaner doing the other art. Here in Human Target, you have Greg Smallwood, who is a phenomenal artist. If you're not familiar with Greg Smallwood, maybe you've read the Jeff Lemire run on Moon Knight. He does all 12 issues here, does the colors and everything. He's a phenomenal artist. I really dug this style. It's got a very retro style to it. Reminds me, and I said this in the overview I did of these hardcovers, reminds me of Darwin Cook when he was doing the Hunter books, the Richard Stark books. I really dig this style. So I'm a big fan of that there. Like, I got no complaints about the art whatsoever. A lot of times it uses like a muted color palette, kind of 2 primary colors with a little bit of shading here or there. In this issue with Blue Beetle, you have blue and yellow, obviously, all over the place. And it's kind of very retro and 60s where he puts his shadows and just some random lines that he'll use as color instead of a shadow. So that's very cool. So it's got a very retro and hip feel to it, even though like the story in the book is kind of modern in terms of superhero comics. Everything has modern stuff. They don't really use a cell phone per se, but like the cars are modern. So it's crossing that line of like Batman the Animated Series where it was modern and also retro at the same time. Greg Smallwood's doing a bang up job of that here, which I think was awesome. No complaints about the art. So let's talk about the story. Yeah, it's 2 different parts, 2 different hardcovers. Didn't need to be that. Okay, fine. What I liked about the first volume, when we're in the beginning of the story, we're in the middle of the mystery. So the setup basically is that Christopher Chance, he's the Human Target. He's a little-known DC character. He had a TV show on Fox that ran for, 2 seasons back in the early 2010s, I believe. That was a whole lot of fun. Chi McBride, Janet Montgomery, and Mark Valley were on that show. Jackie Earle Haley was on that show. Very, very fun. This is like right after he did Watchmen, so he was like he wasn't a big actor or anything like at the time. But anyway, Christopher Chance is the Human Target, meaning he gets killed instead of you. How he does that, he puts on the disguise, wears a jacket or takes a dive, that kind of thing, a bulletproof vest, and the assassin who's out to get you thinks they're done, and then you get to live, and nobody's looking for you because, hey, you died, so to speak, when it's actually Christopher Chance in disguise. He's the Human Target. So that's the conceit of his character. So he's doing that for Lex Luthor here at the beginning of issue 1, takes a bullet for Lex, and then finds out that he accidentally drank something he shouldn't have, which was also meant to kill Lex. So now he's got some poison inside of him. He goes to Dr. Midnight, and Dr. Midnight says, yeah, well, since you drank the poison and then you got shot in the bulletproof vest and you threw up when you got shot, so you ejected a lot of poison, so therefore it's taken longer to kill you, so you have 12 days to live. Hence why we have 12 issues, right? Cool little conceit there. So you're counting down each day is each issue. So the more issues you go into the series, the less time he has. So along the way, he's trying to figure out who tried to poison Lex Luthor, and is also killing him at the same time. So there's connections to the JLI, the Bwahaha Justice League, Ice, Fire, Guy Gardner, Martian Manhunter, Rocket Red, Batman, all those, Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, that era of the Justice League. So I guess Tom King he's a couple years, he's older than I am, so he probably grew up reading those books, the Bwahaha era in the 80s. So that's probably his Justice League is what I'm guessing, right? So this is his love letter to that. So it's making them a little bit more adult in that they're kind of like post Justice League. And then also at the same time, it's confusing that maybe they are the Justice League, but it's clear that they haven't been the Justice League for a while, for a couple of years. So he's kind of like visiting a different member each issue and kind of knocking them off his list and then getting more clues as to how he was poisoned. So that in the first hardcover is very interesting. It's where the second one comes in. It kind of falls apart very fast. The second part deals with his relationship with Ice and Guy Gardner a lot more than it does the mystery. I would say the mystery kind of falls apart here in book number 7 where he's talking to Fire. And after that, it's just kind of downhill from there. Like, you're no longer intrigued. It's clear that he's kind of figured it out. and you're just spending the next 5 issues of him kind of biding his time until he dies, per se, you know, and having a relationship with these other characters. And then, you know, so since the issue's kind of done at the beginning of this volume, it feels like maybe the whole genesis of the story is over, and instead you're left with not really a reflection on his life or what he was doing, but just kind of what he was doing the past couple of days, but when he met Ice on day 1 or whatever. So that's kind of strange. So yeah, I think that's kind of where it falls apart. If the mystery had spun on a little bit longer in this volume or seemed more complicated, like it's a very simple mystery. So it kind of feels like it was dragged out. Like this would have been a really nice, tight 6-issue storyline, but it would have just not have had the Tom King blob, I guess, assigned to it. The stuff where he likes to go into characters and have conversations that are many, many, many pages long. One of the worst issues of this, none of them are bad per se, but the one that really dragged down for me was the one, and maybe that was in, yeah, it was in volume 1, where he's sitting across from Martian Manhunter and talking about, like, in his head to himself or to you, the reader, how you go about dealing with a person who's telepathic and avoid those traps and booby traps and stuff. And in the end, you kind of don't see anything of that conversation at all. And it just kind of felt like a waste. So I really wasn't a fan of that storyline. But yeah, the second volume just kind of all falls apart for me. So really didn't enjoy it that much, which is kind of why I'm like, it kind of falls in the middle of the road in terms of Tom King for me. So it's worse than Strange Adventures. I think Strange Adventures was really good. Vision and Mr. Miracle are on the great side. And this is not as good as Strange Adventures, but it's also not bad. I think mainly because the first volume was so interesting and the second volume is not so interesting. That's kind of on the badder side of it, but not on the worst end of it. So I think the first volume saves it a little bit, since we're going to consider it as one story, right? So yeah, that's my thoughts on The Human Target. I would say if you're hesitant on it, wait for a trade paperback, wait for them to do a 1 volume, or, you know, hey, maybe I'll send these to you if you hit me up, because I don't think I'm going to really want to read this again the way I want to read Mr. Miracle and Strange Adventures again, because those were such good, engaging, gross reads. This one, I think you could just kind of leave by the wayside. And that's kind of sad, because I think Christopher Chance, The Human Target, is an interesting character. It's just sad that he didn't get a standout story. That, like, this isn't going to revive any interest in him as a character at all for DC. I think just because this is kind of like, well, there you have it. Why should we tell any more Human Target stories? You told the last one and it wasn't very good. Therefore, we're not going to explore anything else with him, when I think he's actually a cool character and a cool idea. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Tom King's The Human Target. Let me know down below what you guys thought of this book, and we'll see you guys next time in the Funny Pages.